Okay, so let's check it out. So we've already went over all the verbs here. And again, this is called a masu desu. So this is basic polite Japanese speech. All verbs end with the mas ending. Or basic statements end with des, right? So like, my name is Matt. Matto desu, right? So you've got your first 13 verbs here. I've already went over those. Now I want to look at the basic 4 conjugations. Future tense in Japanese does not exist. You're just going to say the future time plus the present. So in other words, if you were to say ashita, so tomorrow, ashita, eiga ni minikimasu, right? I'm going to go and see a movie tomorrow, right? So mas being the present, but you're just going to use ashita, which would be tomorrow, right? So if you look here, tabemasu, I eat. Now this talks about habitual eating. So in other words, like I usually eat at this time would be what it means. It doesn't mean like I am eating now, which would be the te form plus imasu. So ima tabete imasu. That would mean I'm eating now, right? So we're not talking about that. We're talking about something more like if you say at 10 o'clock is when I usually go to sleep. 10時に寝ます or 大抵10時に寝ます I usually sleep at 10. So we're talking about a habitual action, not something that's actually happening now when we mean present. We got a present negative, so tabemasen. All of these verbs change like this. Nemasen, okimasen, tabemasen, nomimasen, tachimasen, and so on. They all change in that same way. Past tense is mashita. So tabemashita, if I were to say something like, I ate at 6 o'clock yesterday. 昨日6時に食べました. 昨日6時に食べました. I ate at 6 o'clock yesterday. And then the final one is 食べませんでした. 食べませんでした. So I didn't eat at whatever time, right? So if you say, yesterday I didn't eat at 6 o'clock, 6時に食べませんでした. So I didn't eat at 6 o'clock. So these are the four forms, okay? I have a friend, or I had a student here that says shinitai, which means I want to die. Funny, huh? One of my students wrote that. That's sad. Okay, so those are the 4 forms. They work with every mas form, and every verb has a mas form, and and that's the usual form you're going to use when you talk to people, especially strangers or anybody above you socially, so like a teacher or someone older than you. You're going to use that mas des form. It's very convenient for beginning speakers of Japanese because it's extremely easy to conjugate. Okay. So, with that being said, let's look at the final part here, where I gave my students. I know you're probably not used to this moving like this. I gave my students 5 questions. Okay. And I just said, write a basic sentence with this. So the crazy thing about Japanese is it always ends in a verb, okay, with almost no exception. If you're going to make a compound sentence, yeah, the verb is at the end of, the first clause. But almost every simple sentence is going to end in the verb, okay? You're never going to put the verb at the beginning of the sentence. All right. So with that being said, I write at 5 o'clock. Habitually. Okay? So we know write is kakimasu. Okay? And we know 5 o'clock. We've learned this before. Go is 5. Ji is the hour. And then we mark, the particle that marks when things happen is ni. Okay? So the way we start this is go, that's 5. and then we're going to hit the verb. So what's right? Kakimasu. Okay, so kakimasu. You can practice this at home. 5時に書きます。5時に書きます。I write at 5 o'clock, right? 5時に書きます. So with that same pattern, we're only going to change this and the verb. This is going to remain the same, okay? The time, o'clock, and then the marker that says that this is at this time. So let's see, I listen at 10 o'clock. Do you remember what 10 o'clock is? That's right, it's ju. Ju-ji ni. Do you remember listen? Listen or hear or ask? That's kikimasu. Okay, so the answer is 10時に聞きます。10時に聞きます。ね。じゃあ続きまして、notice here is a past tense. Okay. We don't need to write yesterday. We're just going to assume. People assume when you use the past it means yesterday because that's the most relevant time to when you are. So 2 o'clock. Do you remember 2 o'clock? That's right. It's, oh my gosh, it's already fading away. It is ni ji ni. And do you remember answer? That's kotaemasu. Kotae. But of course we have to change it to past. Kotaemashita. Kotaemashita. Ni ji ni kotaemashita. Okay? So I didn't drink at 5 o'clock. I didn't drink at 5 o'clock. What would that be? Goji ni. Didn't drink. What's drink? Nomimasu. Nomi. Okay, mas. But we're going to do past tense negative. So, nomimasen deshita. Nomimasen deshita. Goji ni nomimasen deshita. I didn't drink at 5. And then I don't study at 10 o'clock. I don't study at 10 o'clock. This is the present negative. Remember, study is compound. Benkyou, study. Suru, or shimasu, to do studying in Japanese is how you say it. So, 10時に, okay, 勉強しません. Okay. 10時に勉強しません. So we're going to write this in romaji really quick. So this is 10時に行きますね. 2時に答えました. 2時に答えました. そして5時に飲みませんでした. Deshita is just the past tense of des. And then this last one, of course, is 10時に勉強しません. And that's how you make a basic sentence with time. So we're in our second or third week. We're already starting to make sentences, basic sentences, using time. And the great thing about this is that this is using ni, so this is the time that it happens. We could actually add the subject marker or an object marker and expand this sentence. And we'll learn to do that later. So for example, I write at 5 o'clock. If I were to add me, 私は, and maybe write a letter, okay, 手紙. So 私は5時に手紙を書きます. So I write a letter at 5 o'clock, right? Let's see, I listen at 10 o'clock. So let's see, listen to a comedy show at 10 o'clock. Maybe you're on the radio. Watashi wa 10時にお笑い番組をkikimasu. So with using those particles, you can expand the sentence even more. We're going to learn how to do that later. All right, if you have any questions, make sure that you put them at the comments, or of course you can just ask me by email. Be sure to slam that like button, subscribe button, whatever button, who's got the button, and I'll see you later.